Hello, I'm Bernard Norcott-Mahany. I work at the Blueford branch of the Kansas City Public Library, and for April of 2025, I am reading poems by Edgar Lee Masters from his collection of poems called Spoon River Anthology. The premise of the book is that you are walking through the hill, which is the graveyard for Spoon River, and that as you pass by different tombstones, you see the name, and then the people who are buried there then sort of speak to you. Like that's the premise of the setup. Some people said these are epitaphs on the tombs. They're not, because we actually have a reference in one of them to what's on the actual tombstone. But these are the dead speaking from their grave. The work was written in 1915, and so some of the people who are older actually were around in the Civil War. So there are references to stuff that happened much earlier. And in fact, one of the people who is in the anthology, and we may not see during my monthly reading, is Anne Rutledge. Anne Rutledge was supposed to be the person that Abe Lincoln really loved, but she died before they could get married, and then he ended up marrying Mary Todd Lincoln. That story is apocryphal. We're not exactly sure there really was an Anne Rutledge or that she had a relationship with Abe Lincoln, but she is also included, and of course she would be much earlier than most of these people who died, around 1900, a little bit after. So today's poems, we've got Henry Carey Goodhue, Judge Summers, and Kinsey, Keene. Henry Carey Goodhue. You never marveled, dullards of Spoon River, when Chase Henry voted against the saloons to revenge himself for being shut off. But none of you was keen enough to follow my steps or trace me home as Chase's spiritual brother. Do you remember when I fought the bank and the courthouse ring for pocketing the interest on public funds? And when I fought our leading citizens for making the poor the pack horses of the taxes? And when I fought the waterworks for stealing streets and raising rates? And when I fought the businessmen who fought me in these fights? Then do you remember that staggering up from the wreck of defeat and the wreck of a ruined career, I slipped from my cloak my last ideal, hidden from all eyes until then, like the cherished jawbone of an ass, and smote the bank and waterworks and the businessmen with prohibition, and made Spoon River pay the cost of the fights I had lost. So here, sort of a reformer, but a reformer who took on the powerful, which then ended up, because he lost, making things much more tough for the people of Spoon River. Judge Summers. How does it happen, tell me, that I, who was most erudite of lawyers, who knew Blackstone and Coke almost by heart, who made the greatest speech the courthouse had ever heard, and wrote a brief that won the praise of Justice Breeze, how does it happen, tell me, that I lie here unmarked, forgotten, while Chase Henry, the town drunkard, has a marble block topped by an urn wherein nature, in a mood ironical, has sown a flowering weed? So here, the judge, who is one of the better people in the town and a man of some accomplishment, is actually buried in a rather shabby-looking grave, whereas the town drunk, if you remember, the Catholic priest would not bury him in holy ground, but then the Protestants bought the lot, and they actually built a monument to the guy. So the town drunk gets a monument, whereas the judge here doesn't get that, and he doesn't think it's fair. Kinsey, Keene. Your attention, Thomas Rhodes, president of the bank, Coolball Whedon, editor of the Argus, Reverend Pete, pastor of the leading church, A.D. Blood, several-time mayor of Spoon River, and finally, all of you, members of the Social Purity Club, your attention to Cameron's dying words. standing with the heroic remnant of Napoleon's Guard on Mount St. Jean at the battlefield of Waterloo, when Maitland the Englishman called to them, "Surrender, brave Frenchmen!" There, at close of day, with the battle hopelessly lost, and hordes of men no longer the army of the great Napoleon, streamed from the field like ragged strips of thunderclouds in the storm. Well, what Cambronne said to Maitland, ere the English fire made smooth the brow of the hill against the sinking light of day, say I to you, and all of you, and to you, O world, until I charge you to carve it upon my stone. So here, the person Keene is clearly telling the city, basically, screw you guys, which is what the French guy told the English when they said to surrender. Here, this is what the guy's saying, and he's sort of challenging, of course, no one would hear it, but he's challenging him to put those words of Cambronne, on the tombstone, which my guess is they probably would not do. But we don't know because we don't see the actual tombstone. So those were Carey, Goodhue, Judge Summers, and Kinsey Keene from Spoon River Anthology by Edgar Lee Masters.